All right. Well, let's get started. Thanks everybody for joining us this evening. Happy fall. My name is Dina Hornbaker. I'm the community marketing specialist here at Solar Holler, and welcome to our second solar session in the Holler, where we focus on solar education, policy updates, and more. Um, so today here we go. Today, we're definitely going to focus on AEP's nonsensical requests and what that means for West Virginia ratepayers ourselves. But also, just kind of wanted to introduce Dan, our CEO and founder of Solar Holler, who we are, the benefits of solar, how it all works, again, what's changing in AEP territory, and kind of our process. So before we get started, just a couple little keeping comments. It looks like the majority of folks have muted their microphones. If not, please mute your microphone. You can follow that by looking at the bottom of the screen on Zoom. There's a little microphone icon. Just click it, mute yourself, please. Again, we also have a chat box, so if any questions come up throughout the presentation, Robin, our marketing manager, is there and she will respond back to any questions, or you can save them later at the end of the presentation. We'll also open that up for questions and answers. And then, trying to think of anything else. I think that's basically it, but the chat box is a really useful tool, so any kind of questions can come in through there. But now I'd like to introduce to you Dan Conant, our CEO and founder of Solar Holler. Some great things about Dan. He's born and bred in West Virginia, from Shepherdstown, West Virginia, kind of where I initiated Solar Holler. But he finished his master's at Johns Hopkins University in energy policy. And from there, he served as a technical advisor for the U.S. Department of Energy in the Sunshot Initiative. And Dan's done a little bit of everything from solar installations to policy work. And that's where he launched Solar Holler in 2013 to bring the benefits of renewable energy to Appalachia. And then here we are today, 11 plus years later, and Solar Holler is still expanding solar in not only West Virginia, but in other parts of our Appalachian region. So from there, Dan, I'll let you take it from here.
Great. Thanks, Dina. Thanks everyone for joining today too. I'm excited to see some friendly names in the crowd like Claudette and Travis and some friends that we've had along the way for years and years. So thank you all for joining. The bulk of the time today, I really want to focus on what's changing in solar policy and net metering in West Virginia. It's been changing this year with First Energy, and there's some proposals on the table from AEP. But before we get into that, just a little state of the holler. We've been, as Dina mentioned, we've been at this for more than a decade. We're currently working statewide in West Virginia, but also doing work in Kentucky, Ohio, and Virginia in the mountain parts of those states. We're over 80 full-time staff across the organization, doing everything from marketing like Dina and Robin do, all the way through engineering, installation, warehousing, service, financing. Kind of takes all kinds to pull these projects off, and we're really proud to have built up an awesome team and gang over here bringing these projects to life. At this point, we have helped 2,300 families and nonprofits and businesses go solar across Appalachia. So it's crazy, crazy how far we've come. And a couple other things that we're really proud of. We're one of the first to my knowledge, residential solar shops to go to unionize. 4.5, almost 5 years ago, we joined in with the IBEW, and that was incredibly rare. We're also a signatory with the Carpenters Union. So for us, this isn't just we're not just a solar installation shop. We're really trying to build up the movement and do it in a way that honors the blood honors the sweat and tears that goes into this. from our crews. So we're really proud of that. We've also been on the American-made bandwagon for a long time. I've been using solar panels out of Georgia, and now our microinverters out of South Carolina, and our racking out of Ohio and New Mexico. So been really proud to have been at the forefront of bringing our manufacturing base back to America across the supply chain. And yeah, I think that's enough about solar hauler. So if you can skip to the next slide, please. Yeah, the 2,300 solar systems installed, and that's 38 megawatts of power. So we're talking a really big power plant that just happens to be spread across thousands of rooftops. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we get into the AEP pieces, I think it's important to lay the groundwork for why folks are going solar right now and how, and that'll help make the changes that AEP is asking for make more sense. So as far as why folks are going solar right now, it's probably the single biggest reason that 90% of folks have is that they're looking for savings. Utility prices have kept going up, over the years, up until really the late 2000s, the late aughts, we had some of the lowest prices for power in the country, and since then it's been skyrocketing. And over the last couple of years, we've seen power prices go up over 30% in AEP territory just in the last 3 years. And that's really squeezing budgets. We're not a wealthy state, and turns out electricity is eating up a really, really big part of people's bills. And I'm sure you're all feeling that. I know we are. And so because of that, people are just looking to take control of how much we're spending on electricity. And so folks have been working with us for the last 11 years to lock in that price of power and protect the family, protect the church or the school from continued rate hikes, and really have those rates be more predictable. In addition to that, most folks, only about 10 to 15% of our systems have batteries. You don't actually need them for a standard solar system where you're just tied into the grid and pumping power out. And the standard setup through net metering involves putting the solar on the roof. Actually, can you skip down to that slide, please? Slide 12. Yep, this one. So this standard way folks are going solar is with panels on the roof or out on the field if it's a small farm. And that then feeds the power into the house, into the electrical panel. And if you're producing more at that second than you're using, it'll go back onto the grid. That's the normal way to do it. The situations where people are using batteries tend to be especially for folks out in the country who, where every time the wind blows, your power goes out, or you've got freezers full of beef for sale to market, or, life critical medical equipment or things like that. But that tends to be about 10 to 15% of our homes that we work with. And the vast majority are using solar just to pump out onto the grid and get electricity bill savings on their utility bill. In the summer, when the sun is out, we're really running up those credits, and that'll carry you through the winter when it's not as light out. And as a result, we're designing the systems to produce what you're using over the course of an entire year. Yeah, so up until now, this has all been 1-to-1. So that means for every kilowatt hour you put onto the grid, you'll build up a credit on your bill. And then in the winter, you can use that kilowatt hour credit. That's how those credits are calculated, is what First Energy has changed and what AEP is proposing to change as well. Okay, now if we can go back a couple of slides. Okay, one one more forward. Okay. And now, okay, one more forward, please. Okay. So in order to lock in those savings, folks are going solar a couple different ways. Of course, the cleanest, easiest is an outright purchase. So people who just buy their systems outright. In addition to that, we also have folks who are leasing the solar panels from us. So we'll, in Solar Holler and our investment partners will build a project at no upfront cost to the homeowner, and those lease payments will be 15% to 20% less than what the utility would have charged for the same amount of power. And then we've also got loans available. So really, we are at every step we've been trying to expand who can benefit from solar. This is not a country club thing, and honestly, it never has been for us. It's always been, how do you get solar into the hands of folks who are struggling with their utility bills, whether it's a family or a church or a food bank or folks like that, where every dollar we help cut off the utility bill really means something. So I've been really proud of our work, but that also means all these changes being proposed are going to disproportionately impact the organizations that really need it. Next, forward to the nonprofit slide, please. Yep. So on nonprofits and businesses, similar concept. We've got different financing arrangements, whether it's outright purchase or you may have seen in the news, we're doing a lot of power purchase agreements now, which we finally got legalized at the state level a couple of years ago. So we're now working with Wayne County schools. We're covering every single school in the county with as much solar as they can hold. And we're going to be selling the power to those, to the county school board and reducing their electricity costs by about $150,000 a year in year one. So, and it doesn't require any upfront investment from the schools. So we're really proud of that project. We've already covered 2 schools out of 21. And the rest will be coming next year. Fast forward. Okay. And then the last thing before we get into the AEP changes, just in case you hadn't heard, 2 years ago, there was a huge bill that passed at the federal level called the Inflation Reduction Act. And this is incredible for nonprofits and businesses, especially. There's for the last 20 years or so, there's been a 30% federal tax credit for solar based on the total installed price, including labor, including electrician time, all the panels, everything that goes into it. Well, the Inflation Reduction Act extended that tax credit all the way through 2032, but it also expanded credits. Really importantly, for the first time ever, nonprofits are qualifying. This had been a huge priority for us for the last 11 years, and I spent 9 years of my life lobbying for this, and I'm really proud that we got it through. But every church and school and food bank and every tax exempt entity in the country can now qualify for the same tax credits that businesses and homeowners have always been able to get. So we've been able to level the playing field there. In addition to that, we also got some other tax credits to really drive investment into coal country. So if you're in fossil fuel communities, which is 52 out of 55 counties in West Virginia, you're getting another 10% on top of that. So the idea is, okay, if we're going to be building out all this renewable energy, let's make sure it goes into the places that have powered the country for the last couple centuries. So that's a huge chunk. So that takes you up to 40% of the system cost. And then if you use American-made equipment and are contributing to the manufacturing base in America, you get an extra 10%. We do that. So that means our commercial clients, for the most part, are now getting 50% tax credits. And then if you're a business, you can get USDA grants, which will cover the other 50%. So we're now seeing an explosion of solar for churches and food banks and chicken farms and Dina's dad at his little music shop and folks like that. So even more than the residential space, this is the area that is really feeling it in West Virginia right now. So happy to get into more of that later. But as far as the main point of what we're hoping to talk about, I wanted to chat about what the deal is with AEP. Last year, we're going to back up about a year ago. Last year, First Energy, the utility in the northern part of the state, AEP covers the southern part plus a little section in Ohio County and Wheeling. Last year, First Energy asked the Public Service Commission to get rid of net metering. And we went through a roughly year-long process with First Energy and negotiated a settlement that changes how net metering is calculated. And we knew this would come, but AEP followed suit. And so earlier this year, over the summer, they asked the Public Service Commission for pretty dramatic rate increases. The headline they announced was a 17% rate hike, which is true for homeowners, but it was actually going to be even worse on other groups. So it's roughly 25% on churches and sanctuaries, and low 20s on schools. So it all depends on what rate schedule you're on, but the overall range is somewhere between a 17 and 25% rate hike. At the same time, they asked the PSC to cut what the value of solar put onto the grid is by about 75%. So if these rate hikes go through, individual homeowners would be paying AEP about between 20 and 21 cents per kilowatt hour, but AEP would only be crediting customers for 5 cents. So you pay them 20 cents, and then when you buy the same amount of energy back, you would only be getting a 5-cent credit. Solar Holler has intervened in this case, and so we're going to be filing testimony, and I'll probably be on the witness stand getting grilled by AEP attorneys. So we're going to be fighting this, but the overall thing to know is that they're requesting to only pay 5 cents. We're taking issue with how they're calculating that, and our overall stance is that we want to make sure that whatever the value of the solar being put onto the grid is, we want AEP to credit that fair value, and that needs to be transparent. It needs to have some math behind it. And that was the biggest thing we were able to push through with the First Energy case. Was First Energy just kind of put their finger in the wind and just made up a number, and they had no idea how that number was calculated or why. And so when we were able to come to a settlement with them, it was based on real market values out there. The number we came to with First Energy was 9.3 cents. So I think we'll probably end up closer to that, but who's to say where it all goes? About a month ago, time's blurry now, 4 or 6 weeks ago, the Public Service Commission actually rejected the AEP initial rate hike. So you may have seen some news about that. AEP will be refiling. The reason the commission rejected it is they said that AEP's application wasn't complete and wasn't fully baked. So it's kind of in a limbo state right now, but we know they will be asking to they'll be refiling the case, and then the clock will be starting then. In addition to the numbers that we're going to be hashing out with them over what's the exact value, the other pieces we're going to be really engaged on is making sure that grandfathering provisions in place are fair to everybody who has been making investments in solar. We were able to do that with First Energy. We actually got it grandfathered for 25 years, so that everybody who's already gotten in the queue by the end of this year in First Energy territory gets to make sure that their solar is grandfathered for the next 25 years. And then we're also building in other protections for people who need to upgrade their systems down the line or add batteries or, a lot of in the weeds details. But we're actively doing that. So that's a huge chunk of my personal life or of my work life, just dealing with all the negotiations and weedy details over that. Yeah, so I'd say the overall thing to know about all of this is that right now, if we're trying to boil this down, right now AEP is trying to raise rates by another 17 to 20, almost 25%. But at the same time, they want to reduce the value of solar reduce what they pay you for solar by about 75%. They want to do that simultaneously. We do know that we've got at least another 9 or 10 months, if not more, for folks to get into the queue and get systems submitted and plan sets submitted to the utility to make sure that you're grandfathered. So the way it ended up working with First Energy, we got the ruling in March that the math would be changing, but we have until the end of this year, until December 31st of this year, to get anybody who's interested into the queue with the utility and get folks grandfathered in. So we wanted to let y'all know that this is on the horizon for AEP if that is your utility, because a lot of these are engineering projects, they're construction projects. They take a while to just get fully through the process. And especially for churches, that can be like a 6, 8, 9 month process. So we're really trying to help as many congregations get in now as quickly as possible. That way we can protect them. And then, I think it's going to be kind of a mad rush over the next year to just to help as many people as possible who want to get in under the current retail net metering structure. Next slide. This will be our last slide before we open it up for questions. So as far as our process goes, we do incredible 3D designs of folks' homes and, the mountains and trees and shading and vent pipes and everything. So if you'd like a proposal just to see how the math works and what the numbers would look like for you, that's free for everybody. So just feel free to either go to the website or drop your name and info in the chat to Robin, and she'll figure that out for you. But what we'd love to do for anybody who's interested in what we do all day long, every day, is design systems, match that up with your utility bill, and try to save you as much on your utility bill as possible. As I mentioned, the process, once we have a contract, it varies from like a 3, 4, 5 month process for most residential systems, but it's longer for commercial, just because of various bureaucratic reasons. So commercial projects can be 9-month things as compared to the 4 months for residential. So anyway, if all that sounds interesting to you, feel free to reach out. And otherwise, we'll open it up to questions and discussion now. So I think, Robin, you've been monitoring that.
Not a whole lot of questions now. I see Gary is interested in getting a quote, so we'll definitely get that from you, Gary. But yeah, feel free to chime in on the chat if you've got questions.
Also, anyone can feel free to just raise your hand and speak too. You don't necessarily need to put it in the chat.
Oh, we got a question. We got questions coming in. Great.
Okay,
Michael.
so Michael asked, is there a way to protest the rate hike? Absolutely. Actually, I did mention this earlier, but one of the things I'm really proud of in the First Energy case is that we flooded the Public Service Commission with over 2,000 protest letters. And I know that got through to them because they said it extensively. So yes, it is possible. Actually, Robin or Dina, could you pull out the place on the PSC website where there's a form on the PSC website where you can enter your name and address and a message uh, and submit a protest letter on that particular case. And of course, feel free to put in whatever feels right for you, but the big highlights would be, I think the rate hikes are really getting to folks, and at the same time, if this net metering change went through, it would really hamper people's the one way that you can really impact your utility bill would be drastically cut.
Tom has a question about standing seam metal roofs. If you want to talk a little bit about how we install there.
Yeah, on standing seam, we actually don't have to penetrate the roof. It's really nice. So you just kind of clamp onto the seams. We've got specialty clamps that actually they're the same kind used for like snow guards or snow guards especially, but we use those and just clamp onto the seams and run rails across that, and then the panels go on the rails.
Melanie is asking, what happens if grandfathering doesn't happen?
I view that as extremely unlikely scenario. We've already gotten grandfathering in with First Energy, and AEP even alluded to or said that they wanted to grandfather folks in their application. So AEP wants grandfathering, we want grandfathering. It's more just the details over who qualifies for the grandfathering that is at issue. So what's the exact deadline? And so they asked in their application that everybody had to be installed and inspected by a certain date. A lot of that kind of depends on them, though. So we're pushing back and saying, hey, no, it shouldn't be installed and inspected and received by AP. It should be an application submitted on the front end. So that's where the discussion is. It's not really about whether grandfathering is happening. We know that it's happening.
And there's a question here on that same line about First Energy one-to-one net metering. That from Sally, it already has been established that the net metering is in place for 25 years. That case was settled earlier this year.
Yeah. So everybody who the way it works in First Energy is everybody who submits an application to First Energy by December 31st of this year is grandfathered for the next 25 years. And what'll happen is starting January 1st, there'll be a new program going into place, and that's at the lower rate. So instead of getting full retail, customers will get the 9 cents in First Energy. They would get paid 9 cents, and it would float from there. AP, instead of asking to pay 9 cents, is asking to pay even less, and at about 5 cents. Travis, you mentioned the inspector for your system saying that if anything changes, you'd be grandfathered. Yes, that's what we believe. Or that AEP, they requested that if you add a couple panels or add up to 10%, you would still be grandfathered. So the idea there is even if some technology changes or you need to replace your inverter or just somehow tweak the system to keep it going, you'd still be able to keep your net metering in place.
Adam Johnson asked a question and says, what prevents AEP from changing or filing legislation to change net metering in the future?
So far, what has stopped them from doing that is the extreme smackdowns they've gotten when they've tried it before. In 2015, they tried it, and this was about 6 months after we had cut the ribbon on our first church project in my hometown. And then we flooded every single senator and delegate in the state with 600 emails in one night. So every senator woke up the next morning to an inbox full of 600 emails, and the subject line was "Don't take solar away from my church." And the next day, we got a unanimous vote in the House and in the committees to keep net metering in place. So they haven't tried it since. I think it's easier for them to get it through the Public Service Commission, which is not elected. If they were going through the House and Senate, you'd have to deal with voters. So it makes sense for them to go this route through the commission rather than through the legislature.
We have another question from Sean. If you have some land, you were able to sponsor a farm where the property owner does not pay for the panels but able to use it. So I'm assuming like a leasing, like you're leasing farm. Sean, is that the question? I can try to unmute you.
I'll try to take that. We don't really do that. At least with land, we'll do it with rooftops. So if you've got warehouses or mini storage units or things like that, we'll lease out those rooftops. But for there are folks who do that, but our real focus at Solar Holler is using rooftops. It's what we do. It's my jam. It's our jam.
And well, there's a few reasons for that, Dan, too, that, you know, we like keeping green spaces green, and then the benefit of a rooftop already having ready access to electrical hookup. So it
Yeah.
makes things more efficient.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's way easier because you've already got the electrical in the building. So we just tie in there versus having to run in transmission. The projects just go in much more smoothly as a result. But yeah, so as Robin said, lots of reasons, but I think you'll tend to, folks who do those types of projects tend to specialize in those types of projects.
Paul asked a question. It looks like Robin got to it, but Paul asked, how do you keep the solar panels clean? And do you have to rinse them? Is there a rinsing system?
For the most part, we get rain. So it's usually when cleaning is more an issue in the desert where you get dust buildup, but in West Virginia we get plenty of rain. So we've had to talk some people down off of rooftops before, where like we've had one partner call us saying, can you talk to Bob? He's on the roof again trying to clean off his panels. Like, Bob, please come down. It'll be okay. The rain will wash it off.
It's a great question. It's pretty common too.
Yeah.
Judy's asking,
and well, one more piece on that. Robin mentioned this in her message about it, but when we're modeling systems for folks, we already bake in a lot of soiling. So like we know, we average in how much snow there's going to be over the course of the year. We include some other soiling and other shading things going on. So don't worry about it too much, because if the numbers looked good to you up front, that means they're already taking into account shading from for all those reasons.
definitely.
And the production guarantee factors it in as well.
Yeah, and we put in a production guarantee on the system. So if the systems don't produce what we told you they would over the course of the year, we're covering that for the first 3 years, and we don't miss on that. So we're really proud of that.
Judy is asking if there's other interveners besides Solar Hauler on the AEP.
The main other one is Energy Efficient West Virginia and West Virginians for Energy Freedom. They're our main partners in partners in protest on that. And then there are a bunch of other groups that aren't necessarily directly involved in the solar portion, but like the energy users group of West Virginia, it represents big factories and industrial users. They get involved because electricity is a huge expense for those folks. But West Virginians for Energy Freedom and Solar Hauler are the main ones focused on the residential, homeowner space.
Dan, can you talk a little bit about what triggers the grandfathering? Tom is asking if all three phases of a project, or if every phase, so a little bit about where that line is drawn.
Yeah, at least where it landed with First Energy, and I think it'll land the same place with AEP, is in order to get grandfathered, so the calendar this year. So for First Energy folks, our deadline for signing contracts is October 31st, so 2 days away. From there, we have to go through the full engineering plan set build out and get an interconnection application into First Energy. That has to be fully completed by December 31st at midnight. So all applications have to be into them by the end of the year. And then from there, we have another 12 months to fully build the system and get it inspected. So we'll have a big queue of folks, or a big line of folks queued up at the end of the year, and then we'll be building that out all next year. And all those folks will be grandfathered in. We expect something, and then it's actually 18 months for commercial because of their extended timeline. That's what we got with First Energy. AEP asked for a shorter timeline, but we'll be negotiating that with them. But it should be roughly similar in concept, where you have an initial contract signing deadline, and then a date to get all those applications in, and then a date further out to actually build the system and get inspected. Hopefully that answered the question.
It looks like a lot of folks are asking if there's going to be a recording, and yes, there will be. This is recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel likely tomorrow. So in case you missed something in the beginning, that will be available, and please share it to your friends and family who are in AEP that also might be interested. It looks like Patty has a question, a couple of things regarding some federal grants. Trying to get some clarity here. Patty, if you want to unmute yourself, you can feel free to ask the question regarding some concerns. Her question is kind of some role or support in the situation of applications.
Yeah, just a little clarity, Patty. Are you talking about state level grants or federal grants?
Well, I don't think Patty's coming through, but I think what she's referring to is the Solar for All grants that, as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, there was a big pool of money going out to help low-income families. And earlier this year, EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, was handing out those grants to states to help low-income families go solar. $106 million of that got awarded to the West Virginia Department of Energy, or Division of Energy. And the rules have not been put in place yet. The Division of Energy is currently hiring the folks who will actually implement the program and write all the rules. So we know what the application looked like. We know how much money is coming into West Virginia, but we don't exactly know how it'll be implemented. That'll be at some point next year, but it's not a the program hasn't been fully baked yet. So, we provided advice to the Division of Energy on how best to apply for that, how to implement it, but it's still going to take some time to get the program fully up and running. But the important thing to know is that once it does get up and running, it's going to be targeted towards folks below median income, and really trying to help get solar in the hands of folks who can really benefit from the utility savings. So sorry, I don't have more details on that yet. We're just waiting for it to go through the whole process.
Thanks, Dan. Tom asked, if you sign by end of day on October 31st and you choose to pay and not pay the lease, payment is due at the time of the completion of the installation. Is this correct? And now you're referring to First Energy deadline. That's our deadline for First Energy.
Oh, I'm AEP, so I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, sorry. We're talking a lot about First Energy right now just because it's like kind of giving us the template and the playbook with AP, or they're trying to do the same thing. But yeah, the October 31st deadline we were referring to is signing if you're a First Energy customer. And
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
But to answer your question from there, folks who are paying up front for the projects, we do milestones along the way. So it's a chunk at signing, and then a chunk when systems are fully engineered, and then another chunk when it's all done. So
you have stage gates. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, I think that's all the questions from the chat box, unless, oh, I'm sorry for your frustration, Patty. It looks like you're unmuted. If you're still having trouble, we would be more than happy to contact you regarding anything else that you need. I've tried to unmute you. Hmm. Oh. Thanks, Tom. Yes, the unmute is if you just hover over the Zoom on the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a little icon. It's a microphone, and you just click on that. But I also have the capability to do that. And Patty is unmuted. I'm not sure. It might be some other form.
Glitch in
Zoom has changes. Sorry.
glitch in the matrix.
It's constantly changing and evolving.
Yeah, I guess the last call for questions.
Well, we really appreciate everybody's time and coming out. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody, for taking out a nice fall evening to join us here at Solar Holler, Solar Sessions in the Holler. But if you need any more information, this will be a recorded version on our YouTube channel. We have a new series called Solar Sessions in the Holler. You can just check it out on there. We'll also be emailing this out to all the participants. So we really thank you guys for joining this evening and being part of the Solar Holler family. So.
And please, if you are interested in getting a solar analysis for your home, our website, the www.solarholler.com is the form to fill out, or just send us an email at info@solarholler.com and we'll get started on it.
Yeah, and thanks for those who already are interested. I jotted down your name, so we really appreciate you guys.
Cool. Thanks, y'all.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.